What if a tick bite took you from the top of the charts to the fight of your life? Today's guest faced exactly that. Dana Parish is a chart-topping singer-songwriter who nearly lost everything to Lyme disease and then turned her battle into a mission. Today, she's one of the leading voices for patients with Lyme disease, long COVID, and other complex conditions. Stay tuned to hear how Dana went from singing hits to champion hope. Welcome to the Russo Edge Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and today we're speaking with Dana Parish. Dana is an award-winning singer-songwriter, and she's collaborated with legends like Celine Dion and Michael Jackson and more. But in 2014, a tick bite at a wedding nearly derailed her life after top doctors failed to diagnose the real cause of her spiraling illness, which included heart failure and other devastating symptoms. Dana finally found proper treatment with Dr. Stephen Phillips and recovered from multiple tick-borne infections. She then turned her ordeal into action, becoming a powerful voice for others who are facing chronic and autoimmune illnesses. Dana, welcome to the Russo Edge Podcast. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Well, let's get started with your journey. You went from someone who was going to a wedding to enjoy yourself over the summer of 2014, and then you got a tick bite and everything changed overnight. Can you tell us more about what happened at that wedding and how your illness really first unfolded?
Sure. So it was the summer of 2014, July 4th weekend. I was at my friend's wedding in New Jersey on Long Beach Island at the beach. So we don't think of a beach necessarily as a hotbed for Lyme and for tick-borne diseases. I think I was bitten either on the beach or in my sleep in the beach house that my friends rented because they allowed dogs and stuff, and dogs carry ticks in all the time. Anyway, so there I am singing at my friend's wedding, making a speech. I go home 2 days later to my apartment in Manhattan. And I should mention, I was on the verge of signing my dream deal with Sony Music Publishing at that moment. And I had just scored 2 songs on the new Celine Dion record, the forthcoming record at that time. And I was out of my mind with excitement and happiness and just looking forward to the road ahead, working with all these superstar artists that were on my dream list for a long time. So there I am, come back to Manhattan. I have this little itchy bite on my shoulder. And a few days later, I see what looks like a rash, like not a typical bullseye that you see when you look at the CDC website. But what I found out later, my rash was more common. So it was like just this little pink rash. I walked to the urgent care on a Saturday. They said, you have Lyme. Take 3 weeks of doxycycline, which is an antibiotic, and you're going to be fine, and don't Google it. And I thought, that is like a really weird thing to say. So I got a little bit suspicious, but I felt so ill at that time. I had severe crushing neck and headache. So I thought, I've never had this before. And I also was like feverish, and it was the summer. It was just so strange and so unnerving. There was something about it that just felt it felt like it was going to go on for a while, to be honest with you. I took the 3 weeks of doxycycline. My symptoms, my initial flu-like illness calmed down and wore off. I just remained pretty fatigued. And then October, all hell broke loose, whole body, multi-systemic illness. So months lagged between my bite and my real symptoms.
Well, it seems like you initially did everything the right way. You caught the Lyme disease early. You took the antibiotics that the doctor gave you. So what happened next, and how did things begin to unravel despite your early treatments?
So in October, when I woke up one morning and my breast was swollen and I had severe pain, I went right to my internist, and she said she was worried that I needed to get checked for breast cancer. I went to an oncologist. She sent me to an oncologist that day. He said, it's not cancer, but I agree your breast is swollen and I don't know why, but it's not cancer. So you can go on your way. And that started this journey of me seeing a dozen doctors because everything went haywire. So my next round of symptoms were severe body pain, and they told me that was fibromyalgia. So I didn't even really know what fibromyalgia was before that. I had severe anxiety, depression, insomnia. It was like my brain was taken over by monsters. It was that was the most terrifying thing, was that I could no longer control my mind and my thoughts. And I had no history of any of those conditions before. So just, again, prime of my life, happy. So you couldn't really write me off as being, just in your head. That's what doctors tend to do that, though, when they can't figure out a multi-systemic complex illness. They kind of tell you, well, maybe it's just stress. Yeah. So I went to 12 doctors, from infectious disease to internal medicine to oncology to allergists, because I had rashes all over. They really didn't put the pieces together, but people were willing to just medicate my symptoms. And I kept saying, what about that tick bite? Everything was fine. I felt great until that tick bite, but nobody would evaluate me for other tick-borne infections. And I actually didn't even know about them until later.
Well, eventually you did find the answers, and it came in the form of your meeting with Dr. Stephen Phillips, who would later be the co-author of your book. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but after some false starts and really trying a lot of different things, tell us a little bit more about meeting with Dr. Phillips and what that really meant to you.
Yeah. So finally, so this is a crazy situation. I Googled all my symptoms. This was around Christmas week, 2014, because I was seriously deteriorating. And I went to my friend's farm in California to just rest. I started becoming really short of breath. So I Googled all my symptoms, and this checklist came up. It was a Lyme checklist by this doctor named Dr. Joe Burrascano. I had 38 or 39 of the 60 symptoms on the list. I was freaking out because I kept saying to everyone, I think this could still be Lyme. And they kept telling me it was impossible for it to be Lyme because I took a few weeks of antibiotics. So I put out the word that I needed a Lyme specialist to all my friends and family, and somebody directed me to Dr. Phillips. They had seen him testify in front of Congress or official state testimony that got some laws changed for Lyme patients to allow their treatments to extend longer than 30 days. So I went to see him, and he immediately, first of all, he listened, he believed me, and he immediately knew that I was undertreated and that they probably missed another infection that I had a lot of clinical symptoms of, called Bartonella, which is also known as cat scratch disease, which is very frequently spread by ticks.
Wow. It's just amazing, the up and down that you experience and the uncertainty. And you felt like you were close to understanding the causation more than the symptoms, but you were waiting for the doctors to kind of catch up. So kind of talk to us about, once you recovered, you became a patient champion. What led to your steps into playing that role so phenomenally, by the way? And what more can you tell us about that in the way that you were able to speak up for others?
Yeah, thank you for asking that and for the nice words. Well, I should say that shortness of breath was actually heart failure. And once that happened, my level of anger and upset over the whole situation escalated even further, because I was really close to death at that point. I was so sick. And that motivated me to write my story. Somebody had asked me to write my story for the Huffington Post. I genuinely thought 25 people will be helped by this, 50 people, but it ended up really getting picked up and going, sort of viral at that time. And one of the editors called me from Huffington Post and said, please write more. We need more of this. And so I ended up getting a great interview with Christopherson's Chris and Lisa about his long undiagnosed Lyme that led to dementia. I got interviews with Daryl Hall, who is, a big music idol of mine, who had a very severe case of Lyme, and he's amazing at talking about it. And I interviewed his doctor, Richard Horowitz. So I ended up getting these fabulous interviews, and I sort of made my album, as I say. I did about 7 or 8 pieces. And then I was doing a lot of press with my doctor around that time too, because there were a lot of specials being made about Lyme. We even were on one that ended up winning an Emmy for Best Science Show there. That was Fox's Lyme and Reason. Very, very exciting to be featured on that show. And so we ultimately had a bidding war for our book, and we ended up writing this this book, I'm so proud of it, called Chronic, The Hidden Cause of the Autoimmune Pandemic and How to Get Healthy Again, about how stealth pathogens like Lyme, Bartonella, many others, including COVID, by the way, we did a COVID chapter, cause chronic and autoimmune and neurological and psychiatric diseases. And there is just an enormous body of literature that most doctors are not aware of.
Yeah.
Link all of these conditions to infections.
Well, you talked about the book. Tell us more, because you partnered with Dr. Phillips to write the book Chronic. And what message were you really hoping to send with it overall?
Everything has a cause. Everything has a cause. Even things we don't think of as having a cause, like cancer, like autoimmune diseases. People are told that these are idiopathic. And what that means is we don't know. But actually, if you just look, a lot of times you can find, and a lot of times it really is rooted in infections. All of these conditions can be rooted in infections. There are other environmental factors. And of course, there are genetics that play a role, but it's not often driven by genetics in the way people think. There are these external factors that are causing these diseases. And a lot of times, what we think of as autoimmune disease is really the body's response. It's an inflammatory response to something that's happening in the body, like an infection. So your body's like, I don't want this thing, and it's reacting, and you're getting all inflamed, and you feel horrible, and your joints hurt, and your brain hurts, and your brain fog, and you're tired. That is your body's trying to protect you, but you got to give it some help by finding the root cause and treating it. And for me, that was a miracle. You know, when I really got properly treated, I got completely better, and I never ended up going on any long-term drugs of any kind. I'm very, very lucky.
Well, you were phenomenal in terms of your research, and you're continuing to just turn every single page until you got down to the heart of the matter. So what advice would you give to someone who's just beginning to feel unheard or misunderstood by their doctor?
I love to go in hyper organized to see doctors. So I write down my most salient questions, and I write down my most important and pressing symptoms and concerns. I also recommend, if you can, to bring somebody with you, because when you are very ill, especially if you have any neurological involvement, you can feel very overwhelmed and confused. And so, you know, even if you're the most brilliant person in the world, when you're in that situation, you can't imagine like the kind of things that take over your mind and your thoughts. So I always recommend bring somebody with you to take notes, to listen, to advocate for you, and just go in. Be really respectful, be very respectful, but be very direct, and just say, you know, here's what I need. I need answers to this. What do you think could be going on?
Yeah. What would be one actionable item that someone who is unsure or don't know where to turn, what is that one actionable item that they can begin to take that very first step today?
Well, nowadays, what I think is exceptionally cool is putting your symptoms into AI. I have seen AI give diagnoses where lots of doctors have failed, including lots of tick-borne diseases, because they are highly complex and they are easily confused with other things. And that's the first time I've ever said that, because it's the first time it's actually been the case in my experience where I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I know this is a very controversial thing, to do your own research, but if I didn't do my own research, I don't think we'd be here right now having this conversation. I genuinely think I would not have survived that first year. I was deteriorating so quickly. You can go to a website like PubMed or Google Scholar, and you can put in different keywords and different symptoms and see what comes up. For me, what kept coming back was Lyme.
That is amazing, because there is this fine line between doing your own research and maybe someone accusing you of trying to be your own doctor, right? Which often sort of creeps into the conversation. But you do have to at least be able to research enough to have the right questions, to be able to at least be informed going in to meet with your doctor. For a lot of us who have loved ones or maybe even friends who have chronic conditions like Lyme disease or even long COVID, what advice do you have for their caregivers? What can you say to them for people who want to help?
Well, one more thing I should say for patients, because I don't want to forget this, trust your intuition. You know that inner voice is telling you when things feel right and when things feel wrong. I cannot tell you how strongly I encourage you, as difficult as it is, to listen to your inner voice, because it is hard to say no to doctors. It is hard to say, I'm going rogue here, or I'm going to leave this clinician. But sometimes that is necessary in order to get better. For me, it was 12 times of doing that and just having this internal sense that I was right and they were all wrong. And I ended up being right. And I ended up saving my own life. In terms of what your loved ones, what I would say to loved ones and caregivers, believe, believe them, believe the person in your life who is going through this. Support them just by listening, just by occasionally sending that text and saying, how are you today? And just listening and responding. Just say, I love you. I'm thinking of you. We're going to find ways to get you out of this. We're going to get through this together. Just showing up. Don't ask them for huge commitments when they're really sick. One of the things that really stressed me out was people didn't really understand that for the first time in my life, I couldn't say, yeah, we can have lunch on Wednesday. I did not know how I was going to feel on Wednesday. Give them grace. Allow them to check in with you. Hold the time if you can once in a while. Just say, look, if you're good for it, I'm here and I want to see you. Just visit, drop by, drop over a loaf of sourdough. Just be a good friend and believe them.
Dana Parish offering some great advice. Want to ask you more about the book Chronic. Where can people find it? And what else are you working on? You're so talented. You cross so many different spectrums. What else are you working on these days?
Well, you can get the book anywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. Anywhere you buy books and you like to buy books, you can get Chronic. I am working on a podcast. I've been hosting my own podcast called the Dana Parish Podcast. Mm-hmm. And it has been such a thrill. I've gotten to interview the former CDC director, wow. People like Robert Redfield. That was very, very exciting. And it made a lot of headlines. That was so cool. That was my first interview for my own podcast. That was really cool. I have a lot of exciting ones coming up. I interviewed Dr. Stephen Hatfill, who is now the head of the pandemic response under the Trump administration. So that was a really interesting conversation. He's a virologist, and I get to talk to some of the top scientists in the world. And I can't believe they keep saying yes, but I have so many questions that keep on going. So I'm excited about that.
Well, you are the absolute best. We have a heartfelt thank you to Dana Parish for joining us today. Her journey from chart-topping music to battling a mysterious illness and then transforming into a fearless patient champion truly exemplifies resilience and purpose. Dana's story is proof that healing is possible and that your voice does matter. I'm Solomon Wilcots, and this is the Russo Edge Podcast. Thank you for joining us, everyone.